Hey guys, Bill from Linden, Tennessee. Welcome back to the shop. So had a pretty busy weekend. I try and spend as much time out here on the weekends as I can. And this whole week past, I've been trying to just come out here for an hour or so every day after work, just to try and do one thing. There's 100 things to do, and if I can come in here and do one of them, it's one less to do tomorrow. So this weekend has been a combination of wiring and charger installation and a little bit of one step forward, two steps back, or something like that. The HVAC, that is the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning controls, on older vehicles, all that stuff, all the blend doors and all that are controlled by cables, and that's it. And then on sort of the next generation of HVAC, they were controlled by vacuum, little vacuum motors that ran off of the engine vacuum, and then they sort of slowly transitioned into electronic controls. Now, vacuum controls works really, really good when you have an engine, an internal combustion engine, and you've got vacuum, almost an unlimited supply of vacuum as long as you've got fuel in the tank and the engine's running. So, if you've got a little leak in one of the selectors in the mechanism that um, tells the door at the floor to open so you can have recirculation, whatever. If you've got a leak in a line somewhere, or your line is severed completely, it's not that big a deal, and you probably wouldn't notice other than you don't ever get hot air blown on your feet. With an electric car, you have to have an electric vacuum pump, and um, if you've got a leak somewhere, then the vacuum pump just sits there and cycles on and off and on and off, and it clicks, and it's annoying. Um, and not so much a drain of energy or battery power or anything like that. It's just annoying. So that's what was going on with mine. So I took the dashboard out again and traced down all the little connections. I had to actually replace one of the vacuum lines to the one of the motors, one of the vacuum motors, and yeah, sure enough, they were just really loose little splices that you get at AutoZone or something like that. So what I did was took some heat shrink, some electrical heat shrink, and I've got some that has like this goo in the middle of it. So whenever you heat it up and it shrinks, the goo melts and it makes a weather tight connection. It also makes a vacuum tight connection. So yeah, I did that, and now it works fabulously. And so that's pretty cool. That was all day yesterday, basically. And then all day today was going through this electrical system over on this here side. How do you get that open? There you go. And just finding out where all these wires are. For every one of these relays, there's a coil signal. It's usually a ground. Sometimes it's a 12 volt. Depends on how it's wired. And there's a power going into the coil and a power coming out of the coil to the thing that you're trying to run. So I was making sure that all of those were present and accounted for, and extended wires where I needed to, so that I could kind of try and tidy that up a little bit and get an idea of where things are going. I also got some battery cables with these little pigtails on them. I don't know what I'm going to do with the pigtails. I got them just because you never know. So this main battery cable comes off and goes up to that junction block there, and then that sort of the lighter pink, lighter red color comes back around and then goes up onto here, and that powers the fuse block for the truck. The charger, which we'll talk to about in a little bit, charger slash DC-DC DC-DC converter, will send a 12 volt. Well, it charges the battery. It's basically your alternator. It's your electronic alternator, and that'll have a big old fat cable that comes back over here and charges the battery, keeps the system up and running. My Ranger I didn't have a 12-volt battery on it, and it works fine. And this would probably work fine also without a 12-volt battery. But uh, you feel really stupid when you're in a parking lot and you got a gigantic battery pack, and the person next to you has um, a battery that needs charged, or their battery's flat and they can't start their car, and you can't do anything about it. You feel really dumb. So uh, I'm going to be able to jump start people's cars now, and I'm also going to have a winch, of course, and a stereo. So I kind of need a battery. Moving on to the charger slash DC converter, it's kind of a beauty. I had a flash of where I'm going to put this thing at about 10:30 last night, and came out here and sort of held it up and to see if it's gonna if that'd be a good place for it. That's basically the detent or the indentation or whatever of where the 4-cylinder or the straight six was. And as you can see, you look down the side, it's pretty dang slim. It's right back in there, so it's not going to interfere with my battery box up here at all. And I didn't want to have this thing, I kind of wanted it inside just so that it would stay out of the elements, but I'm kind of limited on space inside this Jeep. I've got that battery box that's sitting where the back seats were, and that consumes a lot of space. And then this thing is quite large, and I want to keep the interior kind of clean, and I need to have room for speakers and stereos and amplifiers and fun stuff like that. So this is where it's going to go. This is where it is going to go. The top mounts were kind of a challenge. Actually, mounting this thing at all was kind of a challenge, because where those top mounts bolts to, those are original factory bolts for something. I don't know what was there, like a vehicle control unit or something, engine control management, I don't know. But I reused those holes, and then the brackets, basically took the brackets that were on this charger from Stealth EV and cut the ends off of them and welded them on sideways, and then put them up there. And then the bottom brackets were a little bit more complicated. We'll go show you those here in a minute. But to make those things, I've got this whole charger. I'm going to tell you something that's really boring, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So this whole charger is leaning back, like the bottom is tilted back at about 15 degrees with respect to the firewall where they're mounted to. Now I've got one of these digital angle finder gizmos that you sit on there. It's got a magnet and it'll hold on to the firewall, and then you zero out the angle finder, and then you put the angle finder on the charger, and have the charger tilted back about how far you want it, and then you have a measurement, and now you know what measurement to make those brackets at. And that proved to be kind of a pain in the butt, because I'm only me. It's only me, and you got to hold this thing, and you got to look at a gauge, and you got to have it at 15 degrees, and it's got to be aligned and everything. So I made this here little doohickey, and so basically what that is I took my angle finder again, zeroed it on that is just a box of connectors, or a box of clamps. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so I zeroed it out on here, and then flipped it up on this piece, and then put some tack welds on the side so that you can bend it. If you put tack welds here or here, you can't bend it. It'll just break the tacks. But if you put them on the side, you have a little better luck. Anyway, so tilted it back at 15 degrees, and then welded it solidly, and then took the pieces and clamped it to that, and took the other part and put it right there, and did some tack welds, did both of them, went back on the vehicle to see if it was right, and lo and behold, it was. So made me a little thing, and now I can just undo all those welds and have my metal back. And then these are the lower mounts, and wouldn't you believe it, I went to Napa and I asked for the left and right lower mount brackets for the charger on a 1997 Jeep Wrangler with the Tesla drive unit package, and they had them sitting there on the shelf. Can you believe that? No, that's not true. Of course that's not true. So these things I just made with cardboard. I had the top brackets made, and they were holding on tight, so that's where the charger was going. And these two, I just put cardboard up underneath, sort of drew some more lines, and put it all together to where it would sort of fit. Yeah, I made it. So this is the kind of thing that I'm on these forums on Facebook, and all these guys are getting on there, and they're like, hey, I just got a whatever car, name your car, and they're like, I want to put a Tesla drive unit in it. I'd like to put 2 Tesla drive units in it. How feasible is that? And the answer is, well, it's really feasible, but there's just so much more to an electric vehicle conversion than the finished project. You have to make a lot of stuff, and I get the sense that a lot of these guys on these forums have never made a bracket, and this is a fairly complicated one, and it's not the only one that you'd have to deal with, especially with I would consider a Tesla drive unit conversion to be pretty difficult. I mean, it's probably the most difficult. You can get a Hyper 9 AC induction motor, or is it Pramac motor, whatever it is, 144 volt system, or like what I did with my Ranger, and you get an adapter plate from Canada EV or something like that, and you just kind of bolt the components together, and you have to make a bracket here or there for the motor mount, but well, actually they're all kind of the same, really. You have to make mounts for everything. Anyway, I'm an idiot. All right, so it's more complicated than just the idea of doing it, and just kind of got to be aware that you need to know how to do this sort of stuff. And anybody can do it, that's for sure. Just got to do it. So there you go. I think I rambled enough on this one. See what else. Oh yeah, and in the BMS, the little BMS box, that little dude is going to go underneath the driver's seat, which is kind of cool because in the back, that's where all the cell taps. That's where all the cell taps from all the batteries go. And apparently you have to connect those last and disconnect those first whenever you're working on the battery or working on any system on the thing for maintenance or whatever. And that's, I guess, a very fragile... Oh, where's my finger? That's a very fragile component. You got to be careful. So you got to have access to the thing. And so that's kind of handy. It'll be under the back seat, under the driver's seat. So you just reach back there, disconnect the plugs, and do whatever you got to do. Okay, well, the next thing on the list is I'm going to make some mounts for the batteries. Yeah, and that will probably be the next update. So until then, again, thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching. Sorry I ramble and say dumb things, and but that's how I am. And yeah, we'll see you next time.